In this video, I'm going to break down how I'm seeing upper body gains from just arm training. So to begin, I want to explain how this journey started. First, when I got into working out around 18 years old, from 18 to about 24, 25, I pretty much trained normal-ish. I trained my whole body. I didn't have significant issues or imbalances, although a lot of them were brewing. And towards the end of that period, I started to get a lot of injuries in my shoulders and hips, and things started to kind of break down a little bit to the point where eventually I started to get so imbalanced that the numbness traveled up the left side of my face, and I didn't know what the fuck was going on, got rushed to emerge. After some time, slowly started to understand what was going on and how it was related to an old ankle injury. I broke my ankle, healed incorrectly, and it threw off my gait and the way that my body moves overall. And this is something that's kind of highly contested. Not everybody's really on board. A lot of people think it's made up or doesn't exist, or this isn't how the body works. I think if you have a significant injury, in my case, the broken ankle that heals incorrectly, and you don't address it over many years, and you keep working out and you keep playing sports, it can eventually lead to some pretty significant muscle imbalances, meaning things are misaligned, in that if your foot doesn't move properly, that your knees aren't going to move symmetrically, neither are your hips. That's going to, if your hips are out of alignment, you can see how your spine, some of the back muscles and shoulders, everything is going to end up being a little bit crooked because your body is extremely adaptable. It's extremely good at compensating for issues. And most people have some degree of imbalance or issues. I think it just depends how severe it becomes. And in my case, it became severe enough, things got out of alignment enough, I was stupid enough to not do anything about it as the signs started to show up in my early to mid-20s, that eventually my left shoulder got so far out of position that it kind of pushes on some type of a nerve and leads to a little bit of numbness and tingling up the left side of my head. After several years of stopping working out when this happened and just kind of living, I was still able to move around. I could play basketball a little bit. I started to understand the issues more, but I could not resistance train at all. There was nothing, any type of significant resistance training for my chest, back, legs even, would worsen the imbalance, pull the shoulder further out of position, pull the hips further out of position, and just make the problem significantly worse. And to me, I was like, this is pretty severe, to the point where I should probably stop lifting weights since it's giving me such negative feedback, or I'm getting such negative symptoms from it. After several years of that and seeing a lot of different professionals, doctors, physiotherapists, chiros, podiatrists, which is a foot expert, athletic therapist, osteopaths, which are trained a little bit more in how the human body is connected, whereas I would say physios and chiros focus more locally on acute issues, meaning if you tear your ACL, it's great to go see a physio. They're going to give you a rehab program to fix that. Anyways, surgeon looked into surgery. They thought it'd make it worse. Got a CT scan that showed there's a number of fractures and some mild arthritis and all this other stuff that I was unaware of, because when the injury happened at 16, I got x-rays and they said, you're fine. Just an little ankle sprain, go back to playing basketball. And I did, and made it worse, and everything kind of compounded. It's not the end of the world. My point being, though, that eventually I understood the Frankenstein crookedness, the imbalance enough to be able to loosen up the areas that are problematic so that I could do some arm training. Understanding enough to know that the lat and the pec on the left side in particular are keeping that shoulder blade in a more kind of depressed, retracted, downwardly rotated position. As you can see here, it's sitting a bit lower on my back and closer to the spine. Okay, and so that's because the right hip is elevated, and so everything is kind of dumping into the left side. The lumbar erector, some of the lower back muscles, the QL, quadratus lumborum, as well as the lat on that side, are all short and kind of pulling down, and that's leading to that shoulder blade sitting in a lower position than it normally would. Eventually, I kind of got a grip on this and understood that, okay, anything that pulls the shoulder blade down or retracts it or downwardly rotates it, which is your lats, which is your pec minor, is going to make the problem worse. I eventually figured out that I could do overhead tricep extensions. I just started with bodyweight skull crushers, because it puts that shoulder blade in a upwardly rotated, protracted, and elevated position, which is the opposite of the position that it's sitting in. It's elevating it, it's protracting it, spreading it away from the spine, and it's upwardly rotating it. So it's putting a stretch on all those muscles that are chronically short and tight and problematic. And so I was able to do some bodyweight skull crushers without causing problems, as long as I stretch out my hips and stretch out my pecs and my back ahead of time and do all this different mobility shit that I've slowly kind of piece together, I can do, a few sets of bodyweight skull crushers and get a little arm pump. So it started out as that, like 4 years ago, getting back into training and just like, hey, I can do some bodyweight skulls and pump up my arms a little bit. I'm pretty stoked. I'm pretty happy that I can do this. And then, after about a year of that, found that I could do something similar with like skull crushers on an incline bench because the position is similar. And again, things are getting into a stretch position. And then eventually, after like maybe 6 months to a year of that, using some weight and seeing the arms grow a bit more, I found that sitting upright and doing with a dumbbell behind my head puts more of a stretch on that lat, pec muscles, rhomboid, all the things that are pulling that shoulder blade down. It forces it to rotate all the way up. And then I'm protracting my scapula, just rounding the scapula around by pointing my elbows in and then letting them drift back and stretch. And overall, that puts all of the muscle imbalance issues, specifically in the left shoulder, which is the main problem or the most symptomatic problem. It releases a lot of those short, tight muscles, or it puts them in a more stretched position so that they don't continue, or I'm not exacerbating the problem. Did that for like another year or so. And at this point, like, my arms are they're maybe 16, maybe 17 inches. They're starting to grow some, but I'm nowhere on my radar is growing my chest, my shoulders, my upper back. I'm happy that I'm just doing some arm workouts. I haven't really even started training legs consistently again. I hadn't really found lunges yet. As I continue to kind of ramp things up and just do all my workouts and keep showing up, I did start to notice some growth in the back, in the lats. Because again, with the overhead tricep extension, you could think about it as a dumbbell pullover. You're basically in that position. You're getting a significant stretch on the lats. And the more I focused on scooping my elbows in and letting the elbows drift back, you put a lot of stretch tension on those lats. Again, in a lengthened position, so it's not shortening and exacerbating and making the muscle imbalance worse. And I started to kind of notice my back is growing. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And so I started, again, this happened over like a couple of years, just like workout after workout. Oh, okay, my back's growing a little bit. What's this move? Oh, maybe if I scoop my elbows in, let it stretch back more. I started to focus on that more. And then I noticed if I push up and back, when I do these drop sets where I do push to failure with a certain weight, in maybe the 10 to 15 rep range, and then rest like 20 seconds, drop the weight down a little bit, and then do another set, rest 20 seconds, another set, and so forth. That type of intensity technique, a drop set, puts significant burn on my deltoids. In particular, if you focus on pushing the weight up and back. And what I realized is that when you're in this position where the elbows are scooped and they're stretched back, that when you push up and back, that forces your delt to contract some, because the delt is going to be responsible for raising your arm up like this. The front delt, some of the lateral delt. And when you're in this position, and as you extend the weight up and you're pushing up and back, your delt, even if you just do it now, you put one arm and you scoop in and then you stretch back and then you reach up and back, you're going to feel your delt start to contract. Because that's one of the functions, is to bring it up. Uniquely, strangely, it's in that position contracting. So I noticed in my drop sets where I focus on extending up and back, my shoulders are fucking burning. And then my shoulders started to grow. So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And then I made this post where I was kind of, I guess, about 8-9 months ago, where I was like, look at this. Like, I'm now at this point, I'm starting to notice. I'm like, I'm training really hard. I never would have thought that my upper body would grow from just doing arms. And I was honestly just happy to be able to get an arm pump. I wasn't like, I'm going to get super jacked and somehow grow the rest of my body. I made this video kind of saying, look at this, my back's growing from only training arms. Then people really trashed my chest. And I was like, yeah, I guess my chest is kind of small. But I don't know. I haven't done a fucking back or a chest or a shoulder workout in 8 years at this point or something. So I was like, not really on my radar, man. I just thought, but again, you're just throwing it out there to the world, and people don't know this, right? So then they're viewing your physique and like, oh, your arms are pretty developed, your back looks decent, but your chest is tiny. This was the first time that I was like, well, maybe there's like some way I could like grow my chest, And what I found over time is that if I, again, focus on those cues where I scoop my elbows in, let them stretch back, and really keep them down as well, I'm getting activation of the serratus anterior, because that brings your shoulder blades around your rib cage. Anyways, if I lock those cues in and get a good deep stretch, that I can feel my chest activating. And so eventually I started to focus a bit more on that. And also it puts a really deep stretch on the tricep as well. And part of the reason this hits the pecs is because the primary function of your pec is to bring your arm across your body like this, right? So if I bend my elbow, that looks like this. If you do it with arms straight, it's like this. And then if I bend the elbows, it's like this. So if I'm in an up overhead position and my elbows are like this, and then I go like this, I'm activating the pec some, right? And another function of the pec is it's going to be involved in bringing your arm down this way, right? So that's why people do pullovers for their pecs. So as your arm is up overhead and then you lower it down, especially in this deep stretch position back here, those pec fibers are going to shorten to bring your arm back this way. So again, if we're scooped, which is going to activate the pec some, and then we're letting it stretch deep back behind the body like this, bang, I'm getting a good pec stretch activation on the muscles, a stretch tension in a lengthened position where it's not shortening the muscle and exacerbating the problem. So anyways, scooping, stretching, and pushing up and back is activating the lats first. That was the first thing I noticed. And then the delts, and now the chest. And the other aspect in all of this that you have to understand is that I'm pushing with absolute maximum intensity. I warm up properly. I do like 6 to 7 warm-up sets. I do my mobility before that for like an hour. So I'm super tuned into this process of if something's out of alignment, I know where the pain's going to be and I know what I need to do. I use the ball to massage out my chest. I loosen up the hips with a bunch of stretches first. I do a bunch of different hanging movements and active mobility. It's this whole fucking thing. But then I go to the maximum, like hard as a motherfucker. And people say they train hard. People say they train with intensity. Come train arms with me. I know everybody says that shit. I'm after each, and I don't say, you don't need to do this. You don't need to do this, but I'm just saying it so that you understand what's going on, because there is levels to training hard and there is levels to intensity. And I've experienced them because I've been super dialed in with this process and I've continued to up the ante more and more and more and more. The reason I'm talking about all this is because that's probably the key like ingredient that's led to growth in these other areas. I'm pushing these arm sets so fucking hard that the stabilizer muscles, the chest, the lats, the delts are coming online to do some of the work. And of course, now I'm focusing on it and using these cues that I'm describing so you can understand mechanically how these muscles are getting recruited, but you're not really going to get growth in them unless you push to maximum intensity. And then using drop sets where you do a set to failure, take a little rest, another set, and that really taxes the stabilizing muscles. The main takeaway that I would like you to get from this, two things. One is that if you have a bunch of imbalances or if you have an injury or you're a little snapped up or whatever, there's probably something you could do, and who knows what it could lead to. If you look at me 4 years ago when I was just getting back into working out, I never would have thought that I could build up my physique to be this muscular. Again, I know I'm not the next fucking Mr. Olympia or anything, but given where I was to where I am, I could never have foreseen that path. And the second thing that I want you to take from this is that this emphasis on like exercise selection or like exercise technique, as in like to build a big back, you need to do like single arm rows with your hand here to hit your lower lats, and then you need to do like face pulls to hit the middle of your back, and then you need to do like, to me it's just overkill. Like it's not inaccurate, but it's just overkill. Like I'm building my back with a fucking triceps exercise, dude. If you push with enough intensity, any back movement is going to hit all of the muscles. And like, unless you're trying to get on stage and be the next fucking C-bum, it really doesn't matter. You don't really need to isolate. It's like a waste of time and energy. Like you'd be way better off to put all of that focus into your process of intensity. Like I'm talking about consistency and intensity, and pick a few movements you like, add some variety if you want, but that's not the secret sauce. That's not what's going to get you the actual growth that you want. I hope that those are the two things that you take from that. I hope that this video was somewhat interesting or enlightening to you. And fucking thanks for watching. Cheers to that. Have a great freaking day.